Hey folks, welcome back for another episode of Code Club. In the last episode, I talked to you about a book that was published a few years back called W.E.B. DuBois' Data Portraits Visualizing Black America, the Color Line at the Turn of the 20th Century. This is a book that synthesizes a number of figures that DuBois and his colleagues made from Atlanta University depicting the life of Black Americans in Georgia and the United States in general back at 1900. They went to the Paris Exposition in 1900 to depict Black Americans as they actually were. They were emancipated 35 years earlier following the U.S. Civil War, and he is a sociologist describing the life of Black Americans. And there's a lot of atrocious things happening during Reconstruction and Jim Crow America. And he wanted to put a face, a context on Black America. If you look through the various figures that he made for this exposition, many of them are very jarring, and I think do a really nice job of telling a story with data. They're called data portraits, right? So they're portraits that tell a story about a people. And I think it's something that we don't want to forget, but it's also a great opportunity to practice our skills learning R, perhaps using R in ways that we're not used to thinking about them. And as I mentioned in the last episode, I think DuBois did some of this intentionally to kind of draw people in to his booth at the exhibit, right? Where he wanted to give people something that kind of caught their attention and then drew them in. In the last episode, we recreated this figure 12, showing the percent of free Blacks in Georgia from 1790 to 1870. To me, this is a really jarring image, again, because you get past 1860, 1865, and you have 100% freedom. Whereas early on, before that, right, it was right around 1% free Black individuals in the state of Georgia. Today, I want to look at a similar but different figure from panel 51. And this shows the percent of free Blacks in America in general between 1790 and 1870. So there's a lot of similarities between this plot and the one we made in the last episode. These images that I am showing are depicted in the book, but you can also get them from the Library of Congress website. I'll put a lot of information down below in the description where you can go to the Library of Congress website to see the images, see a link to the book. There's great stuff being done by Anthony Starks to also help highlight these visualizations. He has a tool that's kind of a web design tool for making presentations that he has used to regenerate a lot of these. And there's a variety of efforts ongoing on social media and elsewhere to try to remake these plots using modern tooling. Also, I have seen people take the theme of these plots and then use them to depict modern day data, right? And so there's a lot of interesting stuff going on, and I think it's important for you to know about, as well as being a great tool to help us to further develop our R skills. So this is panel 51, which we are going to be generating today in R. Here in RStudio, I have panel51.r. This is an R script that we will be starting with and building out over the course of the episode. I hope you engage in this data and kind of build it along with me. If you want to get a copy of this script, as well as all of the data that I'm generating in today's episode, by all means, go down below in the description for this episode and you'll find a link to a blog post where you can get this code. One thing that you'll see right off the start is that I am loading a font that I'm calling B52. This is a font that kind of mimics the handwriting of DuBois. Again, these panels were all handmade. They were painted with watercolors. And so when we talk about font, this is really his handwriting, right? The handwriting of the people that made this at Atlanta University. If you do a Google search for this font name, you will find this font and you can install it. Also, I show how to do this in the previous episode, so I'm not going to go back through all that again. All right, so let's go ahead and load the tidyverse and show text and get it all set up so that we can use that font. And so let's go ahead and load year free. And again, this year free data is taken from these numbers across the top of this area plot. And so again, this is an area plot, right? And so whereas before in the previous episode, there was a cutoff at 3%, right? Here we're going all the way up to 100%, or perhaps down to 100%, right? And so he's showing the percent free he's showing free in green and slave in black. He's also showing it both in English as well as in French because he was in Paris, right? So he also puts the years across the top of the x-axis. There's no y-axis labels here, right? And then he's got his titles in English and French as well. He's also showing the percent free across the top of the black edge. So let's go ahead and see about creating this today. So again, we have this tibble with the year and the percent that are free. We could also go ahead and put in a new column that I'll call mutate, that we'll call slave. And so slave will be 100 minus free. And so now again, if we look at year free, we see that we've got year, free, and slave. Let's go ahead and tidy this so that we have a column for the year, a column for the status, and a column for the percentage, because we're going to want to put the year across the x-axis, the percentage on the y-axis, and then we're going to want to change the fill color by the status. So we'll do pivot longer, and we can then do everything but the year, and we'll put our names to status and our values to being percentage. I'm going to go ahead and remove this year free because when I'm kind of building things out and testing things, it's kind of annoying to have to rewrite the name of the variable. So if I run that, then I get the columns, right? And so we get all the data. And so again, we have the year, the status, and the percentage. We can then go ahead and pipe this into ggplot and AES. Again, on the x-axis, we'll put the year, the y will be the percentage, and the fill will be the status. And I have gone ahead and created a ggsave statement with width and height aspect ratio to match the original panel. So here's my plot. In all my jibber jabber, I forgot to add the geom. So we'll go ahead and add that. So geom area. And so here we go. We now have the slave underneath and the free on top, matching the proportions that we had in the original figure. Let's go ahead and add in our geom text, and then we should be done with our geoms. So to get those numbers across the top, I'm going to need the year, right, for the x-axis position. I'm going to need the percent free for the actual label, and that's going to have a percent on it. And then we're also going to want to know the y-axis position, which are the percent slave, right? So I think we're going to want to break this up a bit, right? So let's go ahead and call this free underscore slave, and then we can take free underscore slave. We can then pipe that into pivot longer. And so if we look at free slave, we then see that we have year, free, and slave. So let's go ahead and make another column that we will call label underscore y to indicate the y position for our label. And so let's go ahead and do an if else, because if the year is 1870, we don't want it to be down at 0. We want it basically to be right around like 90, right? And so let's go ahead and do year equals 1870. Then we want the y label position to say be 90. Otherwise, we want it to be slave. We can add to our pipeline here a geom text, and our data will be free slave. And then I'm going to redefine our AES because we don't have a fill or a status in this free slave data frame, right? On the X, we'll put year. On the Y, we'll put that as label Y. And then our label is going to be a formatted version of free, right? And so what we'll then do is paste 0 with free and the percent sign. And it's complaining that object status not found. And again, I was talking but not thinking at the same time, which is actually kind of hard. We'll need to do inherit.aes equals false. As I was saying earlier, we don't have status, and that's exactly what it's reminding me. So I am seeing that it added another variable, label y. So I think in here we need to drop that label y. So we'll do select minus label underscore y to remove that from free slave before we do the pivot longer. And so now we see our percentages on the edge. Of course, we might want those to be above the edge. So let's go ahead, and this is always a bit perilous. Let's add a vjust And I always forget if it's 0 or 1. I think it's 0 for vjust to be top justified. Hey, what do you know? I guessed right on that vjust, or maybe I'm just learning it. So we'll probably want to adjust the position and the size of these labels. Why don't I go ahead and put in the B52 font family in here. So we have that. So we'll do family equals B52. And so that's there. Again, we're going to be futzing with that as we go through. Now let's go ahead and modify our colors. In the last episode, I showed you this resource from Anthony Starks, who talks about the style guide that was effectively used and the types of plots and all the different fonts and colors and dimensions and all sorts of great stuff. And so he was saying that the green is not full green, but it's 00AA00. And so full green would have been FF in the green position. So let's go ahead then and do a scale fill manual, and we'll do breaks equals, and then we need to give it the free and the slave. And then our values are going to be the colors, right? So free is that green color, and then for slave, it's going to be 0000, 6 zeros. I could write just black, but hey, I'm doing hexadecimal for the green. Why don't we do it for the black as well? There we go. We've got the black and the green. Again, I really love the handmade nature of these plots where you can see the brush strokes. It just becomes a little bit more clinical when we see it here in our modern visualization tool. Let's go ahead and remove that legend from our geom area. We can do show.legend equals false. That gets us more space. Let's go ahead and remove the expand around the figure. So I'm going to go ahead then and add chord Cartesian, and we'll do expand equals false. So that removes the padding. I'm noticing my 100% is getting clipped. So let's also go ahead and turn off the clip. And so we'll do clip equals off. And so now we can see some of the percent, but it's certainly not getting clipped on either side. And so that's good. So let's now go ahead and modify our x-axis. And so it needs to be black. It needs to have the font change. It needs to be up at the top. And we need to remove those tick marks. We'll do some of that with scale x continuous, where we're going to do position equals top. That puts the years up on the top. Now in theme, we're going to do the rest of the modification. So we'll do theme, and we'll do axis.ticks equals element blank. I'll also do text equals element text family equals B52. And I can kind of see the difference in color. It's grayish rather than black. We'll add color equals black. The years go every 10 years in DuBois's rather than every 20 years. We can also do that up here in scale x continuous. We'll do breaks equals seek from 1790 to 1870 by 10-year increments. That gets us all those years. So I'm noticing those years are still a more gray color than black. And that's because I put color equals black in my text statement rather than in axis.text.x to do element text, and then we'll do color equals black. That then is black. Looks good. Let's now turn our attention to removing the y-axis text. And so here we'll do axis.text.y equals element blank, and that got rid of those y-axis labels. Very good. Now we've got our percentage and the year, the x and y axis titles. We don't need those. We could do that down in theme. Let's do it up in labs because we're going to have a lab statement anyway. I don't really have a preference for y to do one over the other. So we'll do x equals null, y equals null. And so that removes that. Very good. We're going to be wanting to play with the margins a little bit because as you can see, the 1870 and the 100% go off the right side. And so we'll want to kind of tidy that up, but we'll do that in a bit. Let's go ahead and add in the title. And so I'm going to see if I can highlight this and I'll get all 3 lines. So we'll copy that. And then down here in labs, we'll have title. All right. And so there's going to be a line break here. And I'm going to go ahead and make this the subtitle, the Done by Atlanta University. And this is all going to be one string. And let's go ahead and put this all on one line. And let's see what this looks like before we mess with it too much. Oh, and it's upset with me, probably because I forgot a comma over here. And so now we see that it's got our font. It's probably a little bit too large. Let's go ahead and shrink it down a smidge. I'm not sure what the font size is. I should learn these things, but hey, what can I say? Plot.title equals element text. We'll do size equals 12. It can probably come down to 10. Yeah, it was probably actually somewhere between 10 and 12, but that's cool. Let's make this Done by Atlanta University maybe 8. So we'll do plot.subtitle element text size equals 8. And now we want this to be center justified. And so we can then in here do hjust equals 0.5. And same for the subtitle, hjust equals 0.5. And we would like to have some line spacing between our title lines, right? And so we can do that back up here with plot title. Normally I'm using line height to make the height shorter. Now we want to make it wider. Let's try 2. And we need a bit of a margin between the top of the subtitle and the top of the plot. And so in subtitle here, we'll do margin equals margin. And then the T, let's set that to 20. And the B, let's set that to 40. Wow, that was like really close. I'm never that good. What do you know? So let's go ahead and bring up the bottom a smidge. Maybe make it 30. That's like right on. All right, I'm happy with that. So we'll also want to bring in the title for the 2 sections, the Free Libre and the Slaves Esclaves. And so I'm going to put that in with an annotate function. And so let's come back up. I'm going to remove this space. And we'll put that on top of geom area for sure. Let's go ahead and put it before the scale fill manual. We'll do annotate geom equals text. And then our X is going to be right in the middle. So 1830 I said. And then Y, we're going to have 2 values. So again, this is 0 at the bottom and 100 at the top. So let's try like 50 and 95. Okay, so we'll do 50 and 95. And we'll then do labels. And so again, this is slaves, esclaves. So we need a quote, and we need a line break here, and a close quote. And then we need to grab this Free Libre and put that in quotes. I'm also thinking that the colors are different, right? So the free is black, the esclaves is white. So we'll do color equals C, and then we'll do white and black. Add that in. And it's upset about unknown parameter labels because it's probably just label. All right. So we've got them in. So we need to bring in the font, and then the slaves needs to be probably larger. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll do family equals B52. Let's make them bigger. I feel like the free one could be bigger as well. So let's go ahead and make them both larger. I say that, but I don't really know what they currently are. So let's go ahead and do size, C, and let's do like 12 and 15, and we'll do size.unit equals PT. And so I feel like the free should probably be the slave size, and yeah, I think I basically have the sizes flipped. And I probably got pretty close there, right? So let's make this 15 and this 12. Great. I feel like this slaves, esclaves, I need to bring the line height down a bit. So we can do that here with line height equals, let's do 0.9. That pulls it together nicely. And I feel like that slaves, esclaves can probably be a smidge bigger. So let's pop that up to 17. And now I feel like that can move vertically a bit, right? And so it's currently at position 50. Let's put it up to say 60. And then let's make the free one maybe up to 97. So I'm going to hold off on adjusting those further because I might be doing more damage than good. It's because I noticed that I need to bring up the bottom margin of the plot just a hair. And I need to bring in the left and right side, right? So we can do that with plot.margin equals margin. And then our left, let's make that, say 20. Our right, let's say 20. And our bottom, let's say 20 as well. Okay, so 20 was too far on all the way around. So let's maybe make the left and right 15, the bottom 10, and the top 10. And that's great. I'm happy with that. All right, so let's move the slaves down just a smidge and the free down just a smidge. And so again, that was 60 and 97. So let's go back to 95 and maybe make this 55. I think that's good. Looking at our x-axis titles, I think those could perhaps be a little bit bigger and then move down towards the top edge. So that was axis text X. Let's go ahead and do size equals 10. And so I think that did it. And maybe there's a little bit of too much margin on the subtitle. And so let's go ahead and bring that up to say like 25. And now, again, like I said, we want to move the axis text down closer to the plot, closer to the panel. And so if we go to axis text X, let's go ahead then and do margin equals margin, and we'll do B equals 0. And that did nothing, right? Maybe what we need to do instead of just axis text X is to specify top. Sure enough, that brought the plot up to the text. And I think that's pretty good. Maybe we can make it a little bit closer by maybe doing like -3. Okay, that's too close. So let's maybe do -1. And we can probably add that margin back. Let's just do 28. Now we need to turn our attention to these labels of the percentages. And basically we need to make them smaller, right? And so we did that up here in geom text. And let's do size. And I'm going to say 10 because I see that the free was size 12. So it needs to be smaller than that probably. And then we'll do size.unit equals PT. And it can probably go even smaller. So let's maybe take that down to 8. And that's pretty good. I think we can maybe bump those percentages up a little bit more. I could go ahead and modify this label Y position, right, to go up a bit. Yeah, we could do like +1. And maybe that's too high. Maybe let's do up 0.5. So you'll recall back up here, we defined this label Y because at 1870, we had 0% slave, 100% free, and we wanted to show that number at position 90. So here, because we're creating that label Y position anyway, maybe we can just modify it here. And that brings it down, and I think that is pretty good. One final thing that I'm noticing that I didn't really notice the first time I looked at these is that there do appear to be grid lines, right? And so let's go ahead and add those. And we'll probably want that to be on top of the geom area, but not on top of our geom text. And so let's come back up here and we'll do geom vline. We'll do x-intercept equals, and we'll do seek 1790 to 1870 by tens. And those are very thick pronounced lines. So let's thin those down a bit. And we'll do line width equals 0.1 to make them really thin. And I think that's nice. I do see them kind of running through the numbers, which I don't really like. And so I think what we'll do is something that we've done in previous episodes, which is instead of using geom text, let's use geom label. And so we'll do geom label. And let me show you what this looks like, right? So now we have those labels. But what we're going to do is we're going to make the background of the label the same color as the green, right? And maybe we'll bring in the label boundaries, right? So let's see how we can do that. So we'll do label.padding equals unit 0 millimeter. So basically remove all the padding. Again, that tightens it down. And then what we can do, we can then do fill equaling our green color, which was this. And then we can remove the border. And so again, here in geom label, we can then do label.size equals unit 0 mm, get a comma there. And so that gets the desired effect, except on the edges. So this 8% has the green backing, and the 100% has the green backing as well. And what I'm tempted to do is to do that 8 and 100% separately. So let's do that, because I feel this drive to be a perfectionist. All right. So how would we do that separately? Well, in geom label, we're taking free slave. So let's look at everything that isn't 1870 or 1790. We can actually do a filter statement in here. So we'll do year not equal to 1790 and year not equal to 1870. So that dropped those two numbers from either side. Now what we can do is the opposite, right? So we can go ahead and copy this down, and we'll do filter year equals 1790 and year equals 1870. And nothing happened. And of course, that's because I did an and. A year can't be both 1790 and 1870. I need to use the or, which is that vertical pipe. And so that gets those back, right? Now what we can do though is, instead of geom label for the second one, let's do geom text. And then we're gonna remove all the label stuff, right? So like this label padding goes, and I think that's good. And so now you'll see that we have our percentages on either side, and we have our percentages in the middle without the grid line driving through the number. And I'm happy with that. I noticed that if I look at his, at this 13.5, I think I see a grid line right there below 13.5, even like mine has a grid line right below it. I don't know. Maybe I'm just being a bit ridiculous here. So on the whole, I think I've done a pretty good job of recreating the original figure. One comment I'll make is that their background, I'm assuming, was white, and that over time it's faded or just aged, right, and taken on kind of this tannish color. Of course, if you wanted to change the color of the background, you could totally do that. But on the whole, I think we've done a pretty good job. And I have to say, I do like kind of the organic nature of the original plots. I think it's just beautiful that these were handmade. I can't get over that. I know I'm gushing, versus kind of the clinical appearance of our modern R version of that. Let me know what you think of this implementation. Let me know what you think of this series of videos where I'm trying to recreate some of the figures from the original WEB DuBois collection of data portraits. I really encourage you to try to find that book, or at least spend some time learning about that exposition. There's a number of videos out there talking about the exposition. I'll put a link to one up here in the corner. It's really worth your time to learn more about the exposition and what DuBois and his colleagues were trying to do. I really have enjoyed working on these so far. I'm going to do a few more because I think they're fun, and they force me to use R in ways that I'm really not used to using it. Please make sure that you've subscribed to the channel and that you've told your friends what we're doing here. Go ahead and give me a thumbs up. That will certainly make sure that you see the next video that's released when I put out another one of these recreation videos. And I'll see you next time for another episode of Code Club.